I'd like to tell you the story of an African-American woman named Grace. She is kind, hardworking, and possesses excellent leadership skills. But for the past 6 months, she's been looking for a job here in Maine and has not been successful. You may be asking yourself, why is it so difficult for Grace to find a job? Well, 5 years ago, I would have talked about longitudinal data from the Center for Workforce Research and Information. But today, I'm going to talk to you about racism. It's like an elephant in the room, difficult and uncomfortable. But I encourage you to lean into that discomfort and ask yourself some difficult questions. So for the next 3 minutes, put on your cape and become a courageous leader with me. Let's start by asking yourself some questions like, why is it so difficult to talk about race? Where did we learn these things? When? And with who? As a doctoral student at the University of New England, naturally I'm drawn to the data. So I found an excellent study from Princeton University that talks about racial priming. It says that we learn about prejudice and discrimination from news and media outlets. So let's think about that for a second. Use a racial equity lens and think about why we ask these questions. Think about it from the perspective of Grace, who wants to be seen and heard for her accomplishments, but isn't always given a seat at the table. Keep going with that thought and think about belonging. What does that really mean? To me, it means interconnectedness and authentic relationships. It's about a sense of belonging in your community. To answer these questions, I went back to the research, this time from the University of California's Institute on Othering Belonging. They do research on civic engagement, global justice, and inclusion, exclusion, and bias. And there's been a lot of research on bias for the past 20 years, but not much has changed. So my call to action for you is to hire Jamal and not Kevin, because we need to create a more racially diverse workplace. We need racial diversity. So take that leap. And if you don't, we might fail. But here's the data that says Maine Department of Labor says there's an increase in deaths and a decrease in birth rates. So if we don't change, we're going to die. And I'm saying don't just change, transform. Because we can be transformational leaders and be courageous leaders at the same time. Let's create a world where there's racial equity and inclusion. And don't just act like a robot. Act like a human. Stay engaged and experience that discomfort and take that leap. I'm encouraging you to do this because now is the time. A lot of people say, but we want racial equity, but I see this happening over and over again. Let's evolve into a racially diverse community. Let's try something new and switch things up. You are the change makers, and you can facilitate change within your organizations by hiring people who are older than you or younger than you, speak a different language, or practice a different religion. You are the change makers. You can make it happen. But I often get asked, how do we make this happen? Well, you can do this by facilitating the change within your organizations and shaking things up. You are the rebellious future of HR, and you can make it happen. You can do this by having candid conversations about race and being courageous to have these conversations. You can start this by talking about racial equity and disparities in the workplace. You have permission to start. So do this a little bit each time, like practicing bicep curls to strengthen your arm muscles. Because like Dr. Ibram X. Kendi says, focus on the right thing to do and do that rather than focusing on fear. For me, it would be burning all the policy books and starting from scratch, because what we're doing is not working. We're not hiring racially diverse talent to Maine, and we're just perpetuating systemic racism. So as we move into the new year, 2021, think about opportunities for growth and how we can ignite that fire of racial justice and inclusion, how we can start fresh. Now, I know Mainers are doing incredible things during this pandemic, like adapting to remote learning and online work. But let's think about how we can adapt using a racial equity lens. For we are courageous leaders, and we can do this. We are stronger together than we are apart. Thank you.